You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 95. This podcast is dedicated to CIRCUS. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and foes. Oh, it feels so weird saying it, but it just also feels kind of right. Hey, friends, fans, and foes. I'm your host. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast, and I founded theartistathlete.com. It is an educational and inspirational online resource for the circus arts. This podcast is funded entirely through my amazing Patreons. This is how amazing my Patreons are. Okay, get this. I got a notification the other day that I had a new Patreon. Her name's Michelle, and she is a Patreon because another person, Susie, bought her a year-long membership to the Artist Athlete Patreon for Christmas. I think it was for Christmas. It's around this time of year. It's December, and it was a gift. So I'm assuming it was for a holiday, maybe Hanukkah, maybe Kwanzaa. I don't know, but I can't believe that a membership to the Patreon of my podcast is worth gifting to someone else. I know that sounds really like you're not supposed to say that on a podcast. You're supposed to be like, this is great and give me money and I will show you how amazing. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and some of the stories I've heard and some of the things that the people out in Patreon land have shared with me have been so moving and really touching, and the way that you guys have just kind of embraced this whole thing that I'm doing for the circus community, I'm just so thankful of it. So thank you. If you want to sign up, patreon.com/theartistathlete is the place. We are almost at our next goal, which means I will be making Artist Athlete t-shirts very soon, but we haven't quite hit it yet. So patreon.com/theartistathlete. Love you guys. Shout out to Michelle and Susie. My guest today is Genevieve Bessette. During her time at the National Circus School in Montreal, Genevieve Bessette discovered and began to perfect the aerial hoop. That's right. This woman invented the aerial hoop, the lyra, the cerceau, whatever you call it, that big circle thing. This is the woman who invented it. She was with a young partner, and in 1993, as a duet, they won a silver medal at the prestigious Festival Mondial du Cirque de l'Avenir. L'Avenir. It means the future in French. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but I do know that word means future. But I think she means Cirque de Demain, because it's the same festival in Paris. Demain means tomorrow. So, but I want to say both because I want to keep it somewhat accurate. Anyway, the success of this beautiful and innovative act led to the duet to receive the mention of honor from the General Governor of Canada. Since her debut in Paris, Genevieve has continued to memorize audiences all around the world, performing on several touring shows, prestigious events, such as the World Economic Forum and the Grand Prix Formula One, televised miniseries such as Bravo's Soulstrom, televised documentaries, and video clips. Genevieve was an original cast member for the creation of Cirque du Soleil's production of Quidam. She created several distinct acts on the hoop, and in 2001 was invited back to Cirque du Soleil as a guest artist for the North American tour of Dralion. Genevieve continues to adapt her successful blend of unique artistic vision, touch, dynamic, vivid choreography, and masterful utilization of space, time, and movement into some of the most unique performing concepts and environments of our day. I love it when I get a biography that's been translated from French. It is just so poetic. Here's my interview with Genevieve Bessette. Okay, I hit start recording, but actually I need to check and make sure that I'm saying your name somewhat correct before
Okay.
I welcome you to my podcast. So, Genevieve Bessette?
It would be Genevieve.
Genevieve.
Yes.
I love that.
Genevieve Bessette.
Bessette.
Correct.
Genevieve Bessette.
Yes.
Welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast.
Well, thank you, Shannon.
My name is much easier to pronounce for some people, I think. Can you say a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, I am a circus artist, aerial hoop specialist, actually. Aerial hoop is an apparatus that actually innovated when I was 12 years old. I joined the National Circus School. It was at the very, very beginning, and I wanted to be up in the air. I wanted to do something in the air. Unfortunately, it was a moment where trapeze was all over the place, highly famous. Everyone wanted to be a trapezist, including me. But yeah, I've learned further ahead that I was probably selected to attend the school to actually do something else, high wire, I believe it was. And I had absolutely no affinity with that apparatus. I was literally in my core soul an aerialist. So I was bugging actually one of the teacher that was there, André Simard, because I wanted to do trapeze like so bad. I wanted to be up in the air. So I managed that every morning I knew exactly when he would cross in his studio with his coffee cup in hand, and I would make sure I would be on a trapeze and do something. And he was staring at me and just kept going. So that was my full routines for probably like 6 months or something like this. Until at some point, we made it to a festival in France. And of course, I did it on purpose and sat beside him. So I could like exclaim myself whenever oohs and ahs, I would see something aerial. and then at some point, there was this lady. There was a ring, really suspended, really, really high. So she was using a flying trapeze ladder to go on it, and then she was using it statically. She did probably like 3 minutes or something, because that wasn't her main discipline. And so I got to talk to her, and she was like, I hate it when it moves and it's really annoying and so on and so forth. But André Simard, that was sitting beside me, was like, well, would you like something like that? And I said, whatever, as long as I'm in the air. So obviously you plant this little seed in a 12-year-old mind, right? We got back to Montreal, and I kept on bugging and bugging and bugging. So at some point he said, all right, lie down on your back. Lift your leg up. He took the measurement of my leg so that when I would be in a hoop, my big toe, lying on the back, my big toe would stop me from falling with the top bar. And he came back later, and there you go. I had my own aerial hoop, 36-inch, and it became a standard in the industry as the size of the aerial hoop. So basically, it's the length of my legs when I was 12 years old. That's the story behind it.
I love that story so much. I remember the first time I heard it, we were at a party. You and I, we didn't ever meet each other, but I was with my friend Jesse, and he pointed across the room at you and told me that story. And I was like, what? Because it never occurred to me that like there was a standard size for hoop, and that it was based off of a 12-year-old girl's leg. It's yeah.
And it was like hilarious because at some point, the people that knew about the story around me wanted to create this new measurement, right? So they were like, I wonder how many Genevieve we would take to get there. Like, well, let's find out, right? So that was like the beginning for as far as the size. And then, so he gave me the hoop And I worked on my own for a while. So it was like I started a book and I was drawing every single little position that I would see in my mind. I would go to bed and see those position and transition. So I have this amazing book of all the drawings that I could see happening, and I couldn't wait to go up the next day and to try it and see if it was working. And then from there, draw some more about the hoop. So that was the beginning of it. And then I had my colleague, Emilie Grenon-Emiroglou, that joined me. And we started working together. So I was drawing some more, but then for two. And then we ended up doing the festival in Paris. And it's quite interesting because whenever you work on something new, people don't really realize what it is or don't really believe. So you kind of have support, but not necessarily fully either until it becomes known. And that was quite amazing for me to do the festival. We won the silver medal. And then when we came back, all of a sudden it became an official circus discipline. And it went literally like viral. All of a sudden there was like hoop everywhere. And it was not even a question anymore as to what the hell was a aerial hoop. And, you're kids, so you just go along with it and you go wherever it brings you, right? So I wouldn't even come to mind to go, do I want to give it my name? Do I want a patent? Do I want to, and when I say innovator of the aerial hoop, it's because of the way that I work with it, like the rotation aspect of it. That really what was my main drive. I literally fell in love with the sensation of being on a hoop and turning and spinning and feeling the support of the centrifugal force. It's sort of a little bit like when you're in water, the floating aspect of your arms and legs. You kind of, depending on the amount of rotation you go and get and how in sync you are with the rotation, you get that same sort of feeling. And just right there, like I was hooked, literally. And the fact that it's also a never ending, like momentum, it can continue as long as you give it the power to turn and turn and turn. So very, very inspiring for me to create. So I was quite happy that I found the aerial hoop in that sense, because otherwise I was just like too tall to do anything else. So I was told.
Oh, interesting.
Because like really always wanted to connect and have a partner, right? But it was too tall to do hand to hand. It was too tall for pretty much everything. So having the aerial hoop with the length of my legs, it was just amazing, because then it was just up to me to create my own vocabulary to it. And I still perform with this hoop today. So obviously, like my full range of vocabulary and gesture had evolved with it. But whenever I work, like I don't need to look at it. I know exactly where it is. It's like my husband, I guess, in a way. We know each other so well. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I love what you say about how people don't really know something is a thing until you make it a thing. And what I find so impressive about innovators like yourself and other people who develop new apparatus or new disciplines even, is that confidence to create for the first time. Because after that, you have skills and tricks and things that are established, but someone had to do the research to make those things and to have the confidence to know like, this is cool. People will want to watch this without having a lot of feedback,
Well, I can only speak, I guess, from, what I came to realize is that when you're that young, it's super easy in a way to believe in what you feel because there's absolutely no worries about food and lodging and all that stuff. So it makes it really easy to just be fully in the moment in what drives you, and maybe also easier to ignore your surrounding to a certain extent. So you don't get influenced as much. At least I didn't. It was just so clear what I felt was just so, I had a direction without feeling, and at that young, you're not doing things because you project in a sense like, I'm going to make a career out of it and I'm going to go there and there and there. You don't go as far, because in my head, I was going to study medicine at McGill University. So it's absolutely not what happened. I mean, I'm so super happy with the way things turned out, but it's just to say it's a completely different dynamic, I guess, because obviously, like, I've created like other things, but I found that I was probably more influenced slightly by the surrounding, because you kind of end up having what I call those little people on your shoulders that are kind of like talking to you through whatever you do, and it makes it a little harder to ignore. So I'm always trying to reconnect back with the little Genevieve that just knew. And it was just about being in the moment and doing it and not worrying about what it would have as an impact. And I think adults are really good to go, well, what do I want to achieve? What's the impact? What's my 5-10 years goal? What's this and what's that? And sometimes when you create, you just don't know until you do it.
Yeah.
So I guess the skill as an adult is to connect with the people and create your safe environment to allow yourself to just go and explore. Because sometimes you explore and it doesn't give anything, really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because you learned something. So I guess the learning lesson is whatever you do with what you do. Like if it was a failure, or if you so consider it a failure, then what do you do with it? Like regardless, it's the approach to everything. Like when I graduated school, I started researching, because I always loved the creating process. And since I've always wanted a partner, I figured, well, the hoop is my partner. And how convenient, because he never replies back. Unless I push it the wrong way, then it's going to come back and hit me. But otherwise, like, it's really, really safe, fun relationship in that sense. So I started playing with the idea that if I want to initiate fully this relationship and be able to bring it somewhere else, I have to change the paradigm of it. Meaning, when you think aerial, people automatically see you up high in the air, right? And this is where your world is. And if you think something on the floor, then it's on the floor. But the hoop has this ability to connect both worlds in a way. So I've decided to bring the hoop down. So the lower bar would probably be 1.5 inches, 2 inches off the ground. And I put a bow tie and a rope. And I found myself a stretchy dress, because it was like, I need to find new things and a new dynamic completely. And obviously you change this, then you have a whole range of vocabulary that all of a sudden are just popping out. That wasn't a possibility if you just leave it at a certain height. And I just remember the first time I put the dress on, people were like, wow, where are you going? And I'm like, training, working out, exploring. And it was so much fun. And it did work. The dynamic was phenomenal. It changes the gaze. It changes the steps, the way I would walk, the way I would. And I think as women, we maybe have a little bit more reference point as far as clothing in that sense. I mean, let's face it. Between a sweatpants and a pair of jeans and a dress and high heel, it's not the same world at all, right?
Poor men.
Like the feeling's not the same, the walk's not the same, So I figured, why not use this in the training as a tool to just open up and see what would come out of it. And so that was part of one of the ways that I would go about creating is whichever opportunities or little element that can help me change those paradigms and play with the mind in that sense. It's great. It's phenomenal.
And it sounds like you really, truly, like you kind of said you referred to the hoop as your partner, but you like actually made it a partner. You gave him a bow tie and you know, like it's...
But just during the training period, that was interesting because I've never literally presented an act with the hoop with a bow tie. It was just for me in my thinking, in my energy, in a reference point, as opposed to use the aerial hoop as a thing, the apparatus. It was literally the partnership. So the approach is completely different. So solely people that were working in the same room than me saw the hoop with a bow tie at some point, but never in a show. But however, in a show, well, I will work with high heels and work in different type of, costumes to get that. But it literally changes everything in the approach of it.
I love that. I love learning these secrets about how artists, in their training sessions, because there's so much known and there's so much easily to be studied about the athletic side of circus and how you can gain strength and flexibility and mobility and coordination and all these things. But how do you access into the artistic in these training sessions? So I love these choices that we make.
Little insights.
Yeah. Behind the curtain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a very interesting debate when you get into what's, the athlete versus the artist and what is happening. But I've always perceived the technical elements, what you've described, the flexibility and this and that, as being, at the end of the day, it's the alphabet for an artist. I mean, a circus artist, right? Mm-hmm. And once you have your alphabet, then what do you do with it? And this is where it becomes really fun and interesting. And then this is where it's up to every artist to create their own piece with it. You have it in writing. You have different categories, basically. But it's the same. I see it exactly the same way for circus artists. Like, what do you do with it? I mean, a split is a split. Everyone is a split. I mean, to a certain extent, like, I don't care whether or not you can do a split because it's just so common. But what do you do with it? How do you bring it about? How you go out? What does it mean when you do your split in that sense? And that ties in also with the impact that it would have on the audience as well. Because circus is it's a performative art, right? Very acrobatic. It comes from an origin of danger. And more in a contemporary circus, we add a little bit more movement to it. We started to have a different approach, but the performative elements are still really much present. It's actually the core of it. So in order to connect with the audience, if you don't want just to keep it and have an effect where people look at you and go, oh my God, I can never do this in my living room, right? And you're like, well, of course you can, because you don't have the same hours of training that I do. But yet you want them to be able to identify yourself with what you do. And this is where it becomes interesting, because you go, how, as an artist, can I present a technical element that obviously, if you're not in the field, you do not identify yourself with hanging upside down by one foot at 5 meters up in the air, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who would? Seriously. So how do you make it so that in a way you get into it, in the way you deliver it that people are still able to identify themselves. That means you have to go to a way deeper level as far as the artistic, the emotion part of it, the interpretation out of it, because that's what people will remember at the end of the day, at the end of a show. And that's what they will remember in a few years from now as well. They might absolutely not remember the tricks, but they will remember the impact that it had on them. And this is where creativity is really fun. Like, I'm going back to this example of using the hoop at my partner. When that relationship for me was clear enough, I didn't have to show up on stage with a bow tie tied to the rope of the hoop. The relationship was clear enough. And this is something that people can relate, because we have relationship everywhere with everybody to a certain level, right? So it's all part of like the creative process to me, to bring it really further as to how people can identify and connect, and where's that. I remember also when I was performing on the Dralian show with Cirque du Soleil, the singer at some point, she came to see me and she said, "Genevieve, I'm sorry. I know it's probably not your super trick. I know it's nothing at all. But when you do this position, it makes me relax. I don't know why. It's just like, I'm with you and I'm breathing and you look so serene and you look so this and that." And she was right. It was like a simple position, but it's also the way I was feeling it as I was doing it, I thought was absolutely amazing. And it was stunned that she could, well, not stunned, I was really pleased that she could get that from, a singer of the show that's singing 10 times a week for so many years, right? And that's seeing all kinds of act. And I'm like, great. If she feels that way and has her, what I will call like her eyes that develop to skills and what elements are, imagine someone in the audience, what it can get out of it and fully relate. Because what she was sharing with me is that, I want to be with you and just be that comfortable.
Yeah.
And feel that like amazing and serene. I'm like, yes, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So
Cool.
no, creative process. Yeah, to me is the most, it doesn't take me much to go and get started on something, really. Because I like it so much. I love to be challenged in that sense. See how I can change it, how I can push myself.
Neat.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, kind of jokingly, but I'm very interested in this topic of creative capital or ownership. You said when you're young, you don't really think about putting a patent on something. And I think about, like the Sear wheel, Daniel Sear. But like if we had named the aerial hoop, or what, I'm from the United States and sometimes people call it lyra or cerceau. What if we had called it the Genevieve instead?
I don't think I would have done that in the first place. That would have been too weird.
But yeah, I'm wondering, like, do you feel any ownership over it? Like, what has your relationship been with the rise in popularity of the discipline as a whole?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's not me. Like, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day is whatever you do with it. Right? So, I know some people that ask me, do you feel like threatened? Do you feel like people are stealing or doing this and that? I'm like, no, because the hoop is really up to you to use your own physical strength, flexibility, abilities to create your own vocabulary. Obviously, there's the easy one that's sort of like copy and paste, but what do you do with it? It's like, I'm going to go back to the alphabet of it. I mean, why would I want to put a pattern on a C or a G? Or it doesn't belong to me in that sense. If I had, the goal and the guts to push it, it was as a starter, as a personal need for me. It was a need to express myself, to find my place. It was my safe zone since I was so tall to do everything else. it was literally my home. So when I would be on stage with the hoop, it was just my place. And there's things that I can do with it that no one else can, and vice versa, because it really depends also on proportions. Since I'm still working with my original hoop, 36 inches, and now I'm like 5'10", 5'10". Obviously, there's things I cannot do anymore that I was able to when I was 12. But if someone is 4'11" and also is within a 36-inch hoop, the results are going to be completely different. So no, I don't mind. I don't mind. What I do find a little sad maybe in Quebec is I don't find that we are really proud in a sense of what created us, as opposed to other culture where you can go anywhere and they'll be able to tell you, yeah, this one is associated with this and that. We can do it in the sport, even though we're not watching sport. I mean, we know who Wayne Gretzky is. We know who, but in circus, like, we kind of don't. We will if it's people that we've studied with for 4 years or that we end up working with. But otherwise, we're not really curious in that sense as to what creates our world or where it's coming from. And maybe also because as circus artists, we have to go abroad. Well, we used to before COVID to go abroad and perform. It's very, very, it's easy also to be forgotten in a way because you just go on, move with your life and do your things. And so we kind of forget that we have resources.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we have it under our nose, then we know, oh yes, this or this person can help or create or just have a little like guidance or whatever it is.
I've thought a lot about this actually, and it's one of the reasons I created this podcast is because I felt like there was a disconnect in the community between the people developing and the people training, and that like there was as you say, like everybody in the sport world knows Wayne Gretzky. How come not everyone knows Genevieve Bessette, like innovated the aerial hoop? Because what I found from that is not so much an issue of notoriety or like you deserve a plaque in a hall of fame somewhere, though
My
of course
star
you do
somewhere on the sidewalk.
But also that there's something to be learned from the innovators before that can expand the art form, and if you don't know what happened before, you're kind of stuck reinventing the wheel or the hoop in this case, I guess. But you're kind of you're doing things that maybe have already been done instead of building on what's been done to innovate further.
Yeah, I think what is mainly, at least that's my take on it. It doesn't matter if, in a way, I don't mind if people don't know per se that I've innovated the aerial hoop. But more, I would be way more content if people kind of knew the will. I think that's the message out of it, that people need to know what it takes as far as a will and what do you connect to whenever you create something. Because it doesn't have to be innovative all the time in the sense of creating a new apparatus or something like this, but it's exactly the same process. It's the same core belief even when you want to create a new routine. unless you just want to do quick because you have a gala and you want copy and paste a little block of this and that, and just going to add this little swing at the hand so it works with the music. Done, cash in, cash out. That's also a possibility. But when you want to create your full, real new act, how do you go about it? It's the same process. You need to have this strong desire and fully want to invest in trying something. It might fail, it might work, it might, or you may start something and it might actually push you in a completely different direction that you would have never even conceived if it wasn't for those first steps that you took. To me, that's more important than, because this is really who I am, and this is who I'm still am today. It's the approach that I have with everything that I do, basically. It's the same thing in life. You want to do something, you have to believe in it. You have to surround yourself a certain way. You start with few steps and then whoops, because you've initiated something and all of a sudden you're receptive. So you hear things, you see stuff. And next thing that you know, you're like, oh my God, look, this happened, but I would have never guessed. I would have never imagined even creating this to that level. And to me, that's what's more important from people that create stuff. It's that level of, I would say that level of passion and commitment.
Yeah, that was the word that came to mind for me as well, that level of commitment. Kind of as you said before, when you're 12 years old and your lodging and your food is all paid for, it's a bit easier to access that.
And no bill, I have to say, and no bill to worry about.
Yeah.
That makes it real easy and smooth. Yes.
Yeah. But if you have, and you kind of said this earlier, but I just want to hear you. You're just such a good talker. I want to hear you talk more about it. As adults or as creators who are not 12 and have to pay bills, what are the ways that you think people can continue to dive deeper or make those commitments to the creative process rather than the copy and paste process?
Well, it starts from the same place. You need to fully know what and trust basically what you feel. Because sometimes not sometimes, I would say most of the time, we are our worst enemy. We will avoid things way before we hear other people give us their feedback. So I guess it's to be honest with ourselves and know our own nervous system in a way. Meaning, I know for myself, I have this certain period where I become very protective of what's happening in my bubble. So I allow myself and only myself to judge what's happening and what's good and what's bad. I'm not in a position yet where, because I'm still trying to solidify things. I'm trying to make sense of all those ideas that I may have. It's kind of my, it's very eclectic until I find more of how it's being connected. I'm not going to, let's say, have someone just come in and check out the reaction. But this is something that I know about me because I'm really, really good at following directions. Like I love working with directors but I need to know first for myself. So then it fully is me and what I want. Otherwise, I know that down the road, I'll be a little bummed out, disappointed because it's not what I wanted. Not that I wouldn't be satisfied with the end results, but it wouldn't be what I had in mind in the first place.
Interesting.
So that's something that I know about me. So I've known, my ways and process and as an adult, I think what really changed, because I'm still going into bed at night and thinking about whatever it is that I'm doing and I'm still creating and I hear music and my full body is already in movement, reacting, even if I'm in a shopping center or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of movement in that way. I guess it's more like the conscious of a process that changed. That makes it, it doesn't reduce, let's face it, when I was 12, it was the intensity, and it was, let's say, burning that same intensity regardless of the days because I didn't have any other things to do. As a grown up, I still have that same level of intensity. The difference is that I am able, and I understand now, that to keep on creating, I don't have to be on the hoop necessarily to be creative. It's always rolling with me in the back of my mind. So regardless of what else I'm doing during the day, it's still working with me. And it brings me to a point where I have to be open and receptive and trust that I may see something or find something that even if I had to do this or that it's not necessarily what I fully would want to do, that there probably is something for me there. So that makes it easier to live. I find for me as an adult, as opposed to see it like the thing that is pulling me away from what I want to do, but as an extra, basically, asset, an experience that I'm going to go and get. Because as an artist, you need to be nourished anyway. So it makes it even more unique from someone else's process that is also going to have a different type of elements that will be stimulating for them. Yeah, so I'll say that's mainly for, and as an adult, where at least you can choose your people.
Oh, this is such a good point.
You can choose your people. That's wonderful.
What I'm interested, you kind of mentioned you move in the grocery store, but what nourishes you? Do you have other creative outlets? Do you paint? Do you do anything with music? Because I've found as an artist that when your creative outlet is also your job, there are days where you have to have a creative outlet from your creative outlet. Mm-hmm. Is that something you've ever experienced, or do you do other artistic endeavors?
For me, music is a big thing. I'm coming from a family of musicians. My mom was a piano teacher and my dad is a piano tuner. So I was sleeping basically in a grand piano while my mom was practicing. I was playing with tuning forks while my dad was tuning a piano. And
wow!
But I did not realize until way later the impact that it had on me, because when you grow with it, it's just normal. You don't understand that it could be different for other people, right? So I realized that music, the vibration of music, the way that my body would react to music is a very, very important thing. As an example, it's actually probably like 20 years ago, I realized that I was hearing something and then my body started to react and moving. And I'm like, okay, I know this sensation. I know this movement. And then all of a sudden I went, oh yeah, right. This movie, this scene, and this is what was happening. It just kind of went like, bam, 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 bam. Oh, but I didn't know. Because to me, I was always a very visual person, which I am. But I had not realized that I'm that sensorial to music. So when I'm saying I can go in a grocery store and have something, it will happen to me constantly. I'll hear music and I go, and I'll sense how my body's moving and I will be able to remember, or it will give me a hint right away as to a different type of movement or a very cool approach research with the hoop, as an example. So it can happen like really, really, really quickly. So music means a lot to me. So I will listen to different types of music and I love to move and explore with it. Not necessarily with the hoop, but just to see how it goes. So obviously voice, singing, drawing, anything that I can express myself with basically is fun.
Love it. And what are you working on these days, it seems like you're such an innovator and a creator during these COVID times. What does your life look like?
What does my life look like right now? Well, I've been for the past 3 years, I've been concentrating a little bit more in acting. So voice, theater play, both French and English. So I did some Shakespeare, which I love.
Ooh la la.
And because that's one of my fear, I guess, is to wake up one day and realize that I haven't fully used my full potential. So I'm a little bit, I know some people are like afraid of spider and stuff. But for me, it literally is to wake up and go, oh my God, I had this potential and I did not do anything with it. So I constantly have this mean of, I think I'll be an eternal student in that sense. Whichever like classes that I can take that will stimulate me. So right now I'm a lot into what fully narration is and how does it impact on an emotional level and the words. And this just keeps on opening up my register, my fan of basically of expression. So I'm feeling a little bit more complete as an artist.
Yeah.
Because I am there. I mean, a few years ago, there was no way that I would have worked with my voice. Because that was, well, I'm saying this, I mean, it's funny, but not in the same time. I mean, let's face it, like I've been on the stage, I did like 6 years of touring with Cirque du Soleil, very intense. You're wearing those like super tight, costumes, you're doing split and stuff. And one day I saw a man sitting in the front row with his binocular on. And I went, oh my God, what is he actually staring at? He's in front row. I mean, there's nothing really like blocking him. And I guess when you're exposing yourself that much, my voice somehow, I perceived it as the only thing that was left that was really personal to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it took me actually a while to feel comfortable to share my voice and in that sense, and to go, no, it's another mean of expression. It's not a threat to who you are.
Yes. I think I laughed because this seems to be such a common thing with acrobats is that fear of speaking or singing on stage. And it always, because I come from a theater background, it kind of always makes me, I don't know, it makes me laugh a little bit because we do these crazy things, 5 meters, 10 meters in the air. We flip around, we jump through fire, we do all of this, but yet you ask an acrobat to say words on stage and they're immediately like, oh my God, no.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the first time actually, just solely was standing in front on stage and was holding a microphone and saying, that poor mic became my hoop for a moment. Like, I swear you could have lifted me up and I would have stayed there, no problem, hanging by one arm. It's the, what I realized at that time is stress management, right? As a performer, you find a way. And this is where I realized, oh, I'm used to be right? There's this little moment where I'll be very nervous before starting a performance. But from the moment I will hear the first note and touch my hoop, everything was fine. But there's a way that the security probably of holding the hoop, knowing, okay, I've got this. This is all right. But then standing alone on the stage with just only a mic, my voice, I realized that I was trying to channel maybe that stress to that poor little mic, but it wasn't really working. So I went, okay, learning process there, something we got to go and work with and dig in a little bit more, because otherwise, like, they're going to come back to me and say, Genevieve, you've ruined the mic. What did you do? You sung 2 songs. What happened?
The mic is still in your hand because you're clutching it so
Yeah,
hard and then you have to pry your fingers out. I
Yeah.
love that though, that realization about stress management.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's so much thing. I'm sorry, go for it.
No, please. It's your interview, not mine.
Well, I was about to say that as main like discoveries like this, it was absolutely amazing to have the opportunity to work for Cirque du Soleil for so many years, because as loving so much to create stuff, I've enjoyed tremendously a creative process of the Kidam show, which was the first show, which was the first show, by the way, having aerial hoop ever in. And then I remember being so excited. Yay, we did the premiere, woohoo. And then I went, oh shit. Now there you go. 10 show a week for my first contract was 3 years. So I was like, oh. How am I going to survive this now? Right. And obviously, like, you feel differently every single day. Things happen. And then I found out that the creativity part of it was to find ways and tools for me to be able to sustain a level of performance regardless of what was happening. And then let's say days I would be sick and still have to go to perform because, right, we're drilled with show must go on. So whatever's going on, you got to go. And I went, how come some of my best performances was just happened to be whenever I was sick or something else was happening to me that I would originally say, I don't want to go kind of thing. And that, from there, I started to think, okay, what's the difference? And then I realized that breathing, one of the most like basic thing ever, being circus artist or not, is so important, is your breathing. And I'm like, okay, what is changing from when I'm, let's say, sick as opposed to when I consider myself in super shape? Well, and then I realized that we are designed naturally, I guess, to find whatever is absolutely necessary. So when we're sick, automatically we will judge and evaluate in a split second, where is your energy required? So you kind of develop and fall into a zone where it's becoming minimum effort, maximum efficiency. Meaning your muscles, because you've been doing it for so long, right? So that at some point, the pattern in your body and your muscles knows exactly where to go. And you would just tap into exactly what it is required to do it and not more. As opposed to when we're in super shape, we just want to go at it. So everything is involved, even if it's not necessary, right?
Yes.
Like we'll be totally fully into it. But by doing this, there's also a part which is leading me back to having the audience be able to identify if physically we are this like full bundle of energy and kind of like too much, then we are slightly disconnecting from the emotional part of it, from the natural breathing part of it, which when I found out for myself, when I was, as an example, sick and performing, I was still able to do a beautiful like routine, but it was stronger as far as an emotional delivery, an artistic delivery. And therefore there was more also for the audience to connect with. So and this, I think it's not something that we work enough in rehearsals, in training, because our focus is so much onto, you got to do the trick, you got to succeed at this, at this, at that. And we somehow push aside that we are a human being working on something. So a human being will come to training as a woman with our periods, with, as an example, which is something I have to deal with as well.
Sure do.
So what do you do with it? So as opposed to say it and pushing it aside, I'd say, oh, today's just not a good day. It's like, no, today is the day. This is your day. So how do you do your best with that? How do you do your best with that day, with those elements? And this is where I believe you learned and can push it forward also as an artist. It makes you you basically develop your toolbox. But this should be happening in training, not just when you're on stage.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of have to tap into that creative, innovative part to understand how to keep going.
Yeah. When I was coaching, I was having those moments, actually. I was coaching a trio to go back on Kidam show. And those are some of the discussions that we would have, right? And how do you deal with it? What do you do? You cannot ignore it. It's your reality. So might as well do something with it, right? Because it's nothing worse than trying to ignore something that is present. It's like the big elephant in the room.
So true.
Like just admit it's there, as opposed to trying to ignore it. It's just going to make it even more, more worse.
Yeah.
And we were doing those days that the girls ended up calling the horror day, because it was anything that could, go wrong. And it was just fun to see, okay, how are we going to do this and that? But everything was planned with the technicians as well, right? Because in Kidam show, like the hoops were rigged and they were moving up and down and so on and so forth. And because it's a machine, let's face it, machine fuck up as well.
Yes.
I know they're not supposed to, but they do. So how do you deal with it? What do you do? How do you catch up? So we had so much fun. At least I had. I think they had as well, but when the day was over, because at the first they just didn't know what would come their way.
What are you doing to me? Try to kill me.
But it was amazing for them, I guess, to see and realize that they had way more skills and confidence, and you know what?
Yeah,
they could handle it, and they knew, and they were so more stronger going on stage afterwards, because they just knew, fine, I'm totally ready and disposed, and I can handle pretty much anything, as opposed to working, let's say, in rehearsal on a perfect version of something, because this is what we want to achieve constantly, right? The perfect version,
right?
Yeah, but really? Is this really going to happen? If it does, like, great, fabulous. But I guess from a moment that you are depending on a technician, on the ring of this and the rigging of that, you don't know. There's a lot of elements that are out of your control. The only thing you can do is to learn how to deal with it.
That's again, like, I feel like a circus lesson and a life lesson.
Absolutely, totally.
Oh my God.
I believe it's the same. It's just that now it's like in a silo in this little section of like circus. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I guess it totally applies for everything.
Genevieve, I could talk to you forever. This is such a great interview. This is such a pleasure.
No, well, thank you. I can talk also forever. It might be a problem.
We'll have to have maybe, I don't know. I feel like people will have a lot of questions for you as the innovator of the hoop.
Oh, great.
But for now, I'm going to have to wrap up and ask my final question.
Go for it.
What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Knowing what I know now?
Yes. Like, knowing what you know now, if you had a time machine and you could go back and talk to 12-year-old Genevieve, what would you say to her that might make, I don't know, that might make her life a little easier? Maybe not different, because it sounds
easier.
Like happy,
easier. Well, that's fairly easy. I think I would go back and say, you know what, just be who you are. I know it does sound like a cliche, but yeah, it would be just be who you are, because you know what? Everyone else is taken. So
I love that.
fully be who you are. And that means automatically like follow what is passionate for you. And it's okay that it's not the same elements that would drive someone else. Someone else will drive on something else. And this is how, as a community and within the arts, that it just gets richer and richer.
Yes.
So yeah, be yourself. Everyone is taken. So deal with it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today.
My pleasure. That was great. And congratulations for your podcast. I think it's amazing that people have a chance to hear and have different reflections, and especially in times of COVID like this. I mean, right? We're at home. What else is to do than to reflect?
That's it. I love that. Voila.
Et voila.
That was my interview with Genevieve Bessette. In case you couldn't tell, I've been saying her name like 12 different ways because I'm never quite sure if I'm pronouncing it right. So, Genevieve, if you're listening, my apologies. You have a beautiful name. It's not your fault. It's mine. I'm American. So that's the story, guys. That's how the aerial hoop, the lyra, came to be. I loved this interview. I could talk to this woman forever. She is so inspiring, such a creative force. And I love how she talked about, when I asked her about creative capital, I asked about, how do you feel that you've like invented this apparatus and like no one knows who you are? And she said that the notoriety, it didn't bother her that she didn't have it, but she needs people to know what it takes as far as the will to create something. I love this so much, the will to create something. And what it means to create something is, it's such an endeavor. I have written here this note. She said, you don't want them to think, oh, I could never do that. And that goes beyond like the technically impressive stuff, right? Like when she talks about how her goal is not to have people look at her and be like, wow, that's so impressive. I could never do that. Because I am also of the firm belief that, of course, people can't do this if they don't train, for 6-8 hours a day. Maybe not 8, that's a little extreme. But if you don't train daily and work on this stuff, like, of course you can't do it. But if you did train daily, you could. That creative capital, that desire to approach things differently, to hear music and think about movement, to draw in a notebook different forms like Genevieve is talking about, those are the things that really help you take an alphabet of technique and turn it into whatever you want to say. And what I think is also so difficult about being a creator, and Genevieve said this really well, she said, whenever you work on something new, people don't realize what it could be or what it is, so you kind of have support, she says, but not fully unless it becomes known. And this is a really tricky thing because you can see it in your mind, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get the support of other people. So when you're telling them about it, when you're like, hey, I had this great idea, until you can show them and until it picks up momentum, then there's always going to be a bit of doubt in other people's minds. I remember when the Artist Athlete started, actually, I had this idea to write this ebook of all this technique that I'd been teaching in these workshops for years. And my good friend Hannah Rose, she didn't say it to me at the time because she's a very good friend. But afterwards, she said to me, Shannon, you just decided you were going to write this ebook and the Artist Athlete was going to be a thing. And I didn't know what was going to happen, honestly, but you seemed really into it. So I went along with it. And it's so funny because for me, I was so certain that that's what it was going to be, that I was going to make this thing. And I think that having headlights on or having, that kind of focus is what creation is all about. Anyway, not to talk about me, but just to tie it into Genevieve and how she had a whole aerial apparatus that people were just like, oh, that's nice. It's a circle. And now look at it. It's the aerial hoop we know today. Done in pole studios across the world, done in stadium arenas across the world, in nightclubs, in some of the best music videos of the day. Aerial hoop. Genevieve Bessette, thank you for being such a contributor to this amazing industry. If you want to find Genevieve Bessette online, we don't have any contact for her quite yet, but I will look around, and if I find any, I will put it in the show notes. As for me, for training tips and inspiration, you can always follow me on Instagram at @the_artist_athlete. I'm on Facebook, theartistathlete.com. My website, I'm on Facebook as The Artist Athlete. My website is theartistathlete.com. And give the gift of more circus to someone you know and love by putting their name down at patreon.com/theartistathlete. Well, I can't. I'm just so tickled by that. Thanks, Michelle and Susie, and the rest of you. I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. Corinne Hagland is on the podcast. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life, and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website, domupsidedown.com.
Hi everyone, this is Allie Cooper, owner and coach at the Radical Movement Factory in Santa Cruz, California. I love supporting the Artist Athlete podcast and the amazing community Shannon has created here. I teach rope and fabric and have a circus conditioning app available on iTunes called CIRCUS. You can follow me on Instagram at AllieCooper_, and if you find yourself in California, come say hi.
Hi, I'm Leah. I hate conditioning. So I created the ABCs of Fitness, a fun, full program of active flexibility, body weight, and cardio with personal daily check-ins to motivate you wherever you are and whatever discipline you do. Join our next 19-day check-in challenge and slide into my DMs on Instagram at ABCs of Fitness.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to, gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.